And today we're going to talk about what I think a certain NBA franchise should do. But before we get started, I just want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, share this episode with your friends and family, and continue to support my channel. When you look at the Phoenix Suns, currently they are 19-20. They are under 500. They are currently 12th in the Western Conference. Yeah, they're 12th in the Western Conference. And things haven't been going too well for the Phoenix Suns. You know, like I said, they're 19-20. They've underperformed. They've been a massive disappointment. And, you know, you look at the Phoenix Suns, you know, they're just 4 years removed of them getting to the NBA Finals and losing to the Milwaukee Bucks, right? You know, they got to the NBA Finals 4 years ago. They lose to the Milwaukee Bucks. And then the following year, they win 64 games. They have the best record in the NBA, and then they lose to the second round to the Dallas Mavericks. You know, and Luka Doncic just pretty much has his way against that team and just beats them down in the second round. You know, kind of shocks them, you know, at a time when people thought that the Phoenix Suns were title contenders. And so that happens. And then a few months later, they trade for Kevin Durant. You know, they come to the realization that the team that we had before, the team that got to the that got to the NBA Finals and had the best record in the league, you know, when they had Devin Booker and Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and DeAndre Ayton and that team. You know, they break that team apart and they trade for Kevin Durant. And, you know, at that time, you know, it was Kevin Durant. You know, he was available and, you know, he wanted out of Brooklyn and, you know, at that time, you know, as fans, we always want big moves and big trades. And we want big names and we just want to do something splashy. And that's what the Phoenix Suns did at that time. And many people loved that they got Kevin Durant because, look, it's Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is arguably one of the 20 greatest players in NBA history. You know, he's unbelievable. You know, he's 6'11", 7 feet, who can shoot from anywhere. He can create his own shot. He's one of the greatest mid-range shooters ever. He can get to the basket. He can hit threes. He can play on the ball, off the ball. He's a big man with guard skills. We all love that. At least I certainly do. And so they get Kevin Durant. And they lose in the first round that year. I think it was in 2023 to the Denver Nuggets. And so they get Kevin Durant. And they realize, like, okay, we probably needed a little more help. You know, and, you know, look, when they got Kevin Durant, they traded Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. And they traded, I want to say, was it like 4 first-round picks? All of them were unprotected first-round picks as well. So they trade all of that to get Kevin Durant. You know, and they lose, and then the Phoenix Suns come to realize, like, okay, we need a little more. And so the following year, which is, I believe, was it the 2023 summer, they trade for Bradley Beal. You know, because the Wizards have Bradley, you know, they're trying to rebuild. And so they trade for Bradley Beal, and look, with Bradley Beal, you look at his contract. He's making over $50 million per year, which is a lot of money for a player like Bradley Beal. So the Phoenix Suns trade for Bradley Beal, and they create this big three, right? But here's the problem. They all got to be available, and they all got to be healthy. And in the case of the Phoenix Suns, their big three of Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker they weren't healthy. They weren't always together, and so they had chemistry problems. They were up and down. Bradley Beal was hurt. You know, Devin Booker at times missed games, and even Kevin Durant. Like, it felt like one guy was available or two guys was available. Not all three guys were available, and so they had some inconsistencies. And ultimately, they made the playoffs, but they lose in the first round. And so that failed, and they ended up firing Frank Vogel. He's the fall guy, right? When you underperform, you fire the coach. It's always the coach's fault. And so they fire Frank Vogel, and they bring in Mike Budenholzer. And so which brings me to this season when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. Like I said, things haven't been going too well for the Phoenix Suns. They're 19-20. And when you look at the big three of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal, when those three have been on the floor together, and this is the stat of this episode that I'm going to bring to you guys. When Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal have all been on the floor together, the Phoenix Suns have been outscored with those three on the floor by 4.6 points per 100 possessions. That is very alarming when you have three of your best players on the team on the floor at the same time. They've been outscored by 4.6 points per 100 possessions. That is very bad. Which brings me to this point that I'm going to make right now. I believe the Phoenix Suns should break it up. And what I mean by break it up, I mean that the Phoenix Suns should trade Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and rebuild and start over. That's what I believe the Phoenix Suns should do. They should trade Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and tear it all down and start over. Because it's just obvious. It's not working. And look, do I think the Phoenix Suns are going to actually do that, especially at the trade deadline? No, I don't. Especially considering that literally they just made a trade just yesterday. They traded Josh Okogie to the Charlotte Hornets for Nick Richards. And look, I get it. The Phoenix Suns need a center. And one of the reasons why they have been underperforming is they can't rebound to save their life. And they have arguably the worst center rotation in the league. It's not, it wasn't too long ago that, they benched Yusuf Nurkic, the center that they traded DeAndre Ayton for, and so that experiment just hasn't worked out too well for the Phoenix Suns. So they benched them and they realized that we need a center. And so they trade for Nick Richards. And look, I don't want to disrespect Nick Richards, but I don't think Nick Richards is going to save the Phoenix Suns season. I don't think he's a needle mover of that ilk. I mean, you look at where he came from. He was a center or a backup center, starting center, whatever, for the Charlotte Hornets, who were 8-28. The Charlotte Hornets currently have the second worst record in the Eastern Conference. And so is Nick Richards a guy that's a fringe starter on a horrible team? Is he really going to change Phoenix's life? I kind of doubt it. Now, I could be wrong. We'll see what happens. But I look at the Phoenix Suns, and they're just a mess of a team. And even worse for the Phoenix Suns is I don't see an easy way out of their situation when you consider the fact that they only have one first-round pick, and that's in 2031. They're under control of one first-round pick, and that's in 2031. That's 6 years out. That's pretty much all they have to improve their team. And when you look at this Phoenix Suns team, they need a lot. Like I said, now they just traded for a center in Nick Richards. And look, I might be wrong. I could be wrong about Nick Richards, but we'll see. But not only do they lack a center, but they need athleticism on the perimeter. They need a point of attack defender. They need a point guard. They need a lot of stuff. And the problem for the Phoenix Suns is they just don't have the assets to get everything to help that they want to balance their roster out. And so they're in a really, really, really bad predicament. And when you look at the Western Conference is really good. You have the Oklahoma City Thunder. You have the Houston Rockets, who are just rolling right now. And with Houston, they have young talent today, But most importantly, they have picks and young talent and assets to use to make trades if they want to. And so you got the Houston Rockets. You have the Memphis Grizzlies, who've been really good. You have the Denver Nuggets. You with Nikola Jokic, who most people, including myself, consider to be the best player in the world. You have the Dallas Mavericks, and look, the Dallas Mavericks they're injured right now. They don't have Luka Doncic, they don't have Kyrie Irving, and they've been banged up, but they're gonna come back. And when I look at Dallas Mavericks, when I look at the Mavs roster, they're pretty deep. They're really good. They just got to get their two best scorers back. And so they're good. They're really good. And then you have the Clippers. And you have the Lakers have been playing a little better. You still got LeBron and AD. You got the Sacramento Kings. They've been playing better. And the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it's just a deep loaded conference, especially when you look at like the top 5 or 6 teams. And so when I look at the Phoenix Suns, like I said, you're 19-20. You're under 500. And as of today, you wouldn't even make the play-in, let alone the playoffs. And so it's really bad for the Phoenix Suns. It's really, really, really bad. And which brings me to the point that I made earlier. I think they should blow it up. I think you have to look at moving Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, because where you're going with those two as is, with no capital and assets to improve your team that I'm sure you want to improve. Bradley Beal, look, I'm sure, and look, I've heard the Jimmy Butler rumors, and I've read all the articles, and I've listened to all the basketball podcasts, and look, obviously the Phoenix Suns want Jimmy Butler. But here's the problem. You're going to have to move Bradley Beal to get him, as far as like salary matching. And the problem is, who wants Bradley Beal? Who wants a player who's making over $50 million, who you recently just benched? He's playing the 6-man role. Like, who would want Bradley Beal at his salary? I would say nobody, including the Miami Heat. And so they're kind of stuck in that situation with Bradley Beal. And when you look at the new CBA and you look at all the second aprons that, that's kind of been installed, it's just hard for teams to take on overpaid players. It's just hard for teams to take on just underperforming players at high salaries, because you have to be cautious of putting together the right team who, considering like the money that the players are making. And so it's going to be very difficult. And so, look, as painful as it is for the Phoenix Suns, I don't think they have a choice moving forward but to look at moving Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and starting over. Kevin Durant is 36 years old. And as great as KD is, and he is still great, make no mistake about it, Kevin Durant is still great. But when you look at Kevin Durant, he's 36 years old. And so if you put him on the market, chances are, while I think you'll get a good return in all likelihood, I don't know if you're going to get the return that the Phoenix Suns really need to spring forward or rebuild. And so the reality is you're going to have to look at moving Kevin Durant, because, again, he's 36 years old, and you look at the Phoenix Suns, like, you're going nowhere. Where are you going? And so you're going to have to look at moving Kevin Durant because of that. And I think you have to look at moving Bradley Beal as well. I mean, not Bradley, but Devin Booker as well. Just because Devin Booker, I believe, compared to Kevin Durant, would give you the most in return, considering that he is 28 years old and he is young, and he is still, despite the fact that, the Suns have been underperforming, he's still, to me, one of the top, 20 players in the league. Like, I think Devin Booker is still a top 20 player, even still today. Like, he's still very, very, very good, who can get you buckets, who can get you 28 to 30 a game, who can score on all three levels. Like, there's a lot of teams that would want that. In particular, one team in particular that I think he would fit great on, and that's the Houston Rockets. And you look at the Houston Rockets, like I mentioned before, they've been great. They're I think they're like second in the Western Conference with a 28-12 record. And so the Houston Rockets have been great. But if there's a weakness on their team, it's 3-point shooting, and it's whether or not they have a true go-to guy, on the perimeter. Like, they have some young talent, and they have, like, Alfred Sengun, and they have Jalen Green, and they have Amen Thompson, who's becoming one of the young, up-and-coming young players, defenders, athletes in the league. Like, he's been incredible. And so they have him, and they have veterans like Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. You know what I'm saying? And they do have, a guy like Tari Eason. So they got young talent on their roster. And Jabari Smith, who's currently injured. They have a guy like him. So they have young talent, but they're missing a go-to guy. And look, I know Jalen Green's been on the tear, but are we sure about Jalen Green? I mean, are we sure? He's been a little up and down in his career. And look, he's been on the tear, but are we sure about Jalen Green? Or is he just on a hot streak? So I look at a team like Houston, and I think they would be a logical Devin Booker suitor. And guess what? Houston has picks. And not only do they have picks, they actually have Phoenix's picks from the Kevin Durant trade when they traded those picks to Brooklyn, and Brooklyn ended up trading them picks to Houston. And so Houston has Phoenix's picks. And so that's a logical trade. There's a framework there that I think could be worked out, between Houston and Phoenix, where Houston could get Devin Booker and Phoenix could get, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 of those picks and maybe a young player or two. Who knows? But I think there's something there to be worked out. And when I look at the Phoenix Suns again, they're going like I said, they're 19-20. If the season ended today, they wouldn't even be in the play-in. And I think the Phoenix Suns need to ask themselves, where are we going? What is our long-term vision? Like I said, you look at the Western Conference. It's just young teams that are just continually getting better. And our team is just old and stuck, going nowhere. And so, look, they've been in these rumors about, look, they traded for Nick Richards. And they want to get Jimmy Butler. But my thing is that the right idea for them? I'm not sure. Jimmy Butler's 36 and he's old and he wants a lot of money. And like, is it really a good idea to pay for an old team to pay $50 million for an older player on a team that's, as is, we're just kind of average at best? I don't know if that's the right idea for the Phoenix Suns. I think the right approach for the Phoenix Suns personally is I think they should go the opposite direction. I think they should look at moving Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Devin Booker maybe possibly to a team like the Houston Rockets. Maybe you move Kevin Durant to. I mean, look, there's a few teams that could want a Kevin Durant. The Golden State Warriors. They seem to want to upgrade their team and want to, make the best out of the Steph Curry era or whatever remains of that. Of whatever Steph Curry has in his career, like that, maybe that's a logical fit. Maybe it's I don't know. Hell, maybe not the Atlanta Hawks. Who knows? Maybe we'll go. It could be possible. Who knows? But I mean, I think the Phoenix Suns should break up their team. Like, to me, instead of them going this route of trying to find small pieces and trying to get a marginal center. No, look, man, you're going nowhere. I think the Phoenix Suns should trade Kevin Durant. I think they should trade Devin Booker. I think they should trade him for as many assets as you can get and start over and build your team and rebuild. And look, for the Phoenix Suns, I think it's okay for them to admit failure, to admit that what we did didn't work. And look, in sports, every team, most teams go through this sometimes. Like you make gambles, you take swings, and sometimes they work, and more often times they don't work. And when you look at the Phoenix Suns, it's just obvious to me that the Kevin Durant trade and them getting them getting Bradley Beal, like it didn't work. We can play the hindsight game, and look, hindsight's 2020. I think the Phoenix Suns might have been better off just maybe you could have gone after a Damian Lillard, and had you gotten Damian Lillard, maybe you could have kept Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, and who knows, maybe you would have had Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, and maybe a center that you could have found later on. Like, in theory, like that, to me, arguably would have been a better team than the team that they have now. But look, hindsight's 2020. And look, I get it. When they made the Kevin Durant move, it was Kevin Durant. How can you pass up getting Kevin Durant? I get it. I get it from the standpoint of when the Phoenix Suns made that move. But at the end of the day, it didn't work. The move didn't work out. And I think for the Phoenix Suns and for their owner, Isbia, I think that's his name. I think for them, I think it would be best for their franchise to just scrap everything, trade Kevin Durant, trade Devin Booker, start over, rebuild, and just try to create a new era of the Phoenix Suns. But that's just me. But we'll see what the Phoenix Suns do moving forward. We'll see if this move of them getting Nick Richards can jumpstart their team, and maybe they can go on a little bit of a run, and maybe they can prove me wrong. But we'll see what happens. But that's all I have for today, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.